Oklahoma Senator James Lankford for a touch on the government shutdown and some other topics. Good afternoon, Senator. How are you? Senator Lankford, good afternoon. How are you?
Hey, good afternoon.
A lot of things I wanted to touch with you on. I know there was, again today, the vote failed for the sixth time in the Senate on potentially reopening the government, the dueling CRs there. Is there any progress you're seeing behind the scenes to end the government shutdown?
Yeah, there is some progress that's happening behind the scenes, but Democrats continue to still be dug in. The bill they continue to be able to bring and say this is what we're demanding is $1.5 trillion of new spending. It is rolling back a lot of the areas of the One Big Beautiful Bill. It is taking away the $50 billion that we put into rural health care, which we can't even believe that that's in there, that they want to be able to remove that. It is doing a COVID-era subsidy that was done for insurance premiums to be able to help people during the time of COVID. It makes that now permanent. We try to remind them that, hey, COVID is not here. But they're wanting to be able to extend that COVID area subsidy indefinitely. It's about $450 billion just to do that. But they also want to reinstate some climate programs. They have a demand to have electric vehicles, get access to HOV lanes anywhere in the country, even if they only have one driver. I mean, there's some really bizarre stuff in all their demands that we can keep saying to them, hey, we can negotiate, but we're not going to negotiate all this stuff during a shutdown. Let's get the government open as we've done for the last 5 years. Every time we get into September, we need more time. Let's just get it back open and then keep negotiating.
So where do you think the breaking point will be? Will Democrats cave and support the Republican version of the CR? Will there be a meeting in the middle? What do you think is going to end up ending this?
Well, right now the House of Representatives is not even in session. So even if we pass something, it would take time for the House to be able to come back, go through their process, to be able to vote on it. If they made changes on it, then we'd have to come back over to the Senate on it. The only way to really open the government up is the way that we've actually put forward. That wasn't intended to be a Republican-only proposal. It was what's called a clean continuing resolution. It's just keep spending where we are while we negotiate the rest. That has been a nonpartisan way to be able to do this. It is exactly the same thing that happened all 4 Septembers under the Biden administration, where we had a nonpartisan, just keep the government open plan and then continue to be able to negotiate until we got everything done when we needed extra time. So this wasn't intended to be a Republican proposal and then a Democrat proposal until they came forward and said, no, we need $1.5 trillion additional dollars for literally a few weeks extension, and then we want to reopen negotiations all over again on the next thing. It's just not a rational proposal that they brought, and so that's what's made this really frustrating. Even the Speaker of the House has said, typically in this setting we would negotiate and say, hey, we'll take away the Republican demands and you drop yours and we'll just go forward, except we have nothing to negotiate because we didn't bring anything other than just continue status quo while we're still negotiating things out. So that makes this harder to try to figure out. Shutdowns are like wars. They're easy to start and they're really hard to stop once they're going on because we're trying to figure out what Democrats are really looking for, what's rational and reasonable.
When will federal employees start missing paychecks, and what local impacts here in Tulsa and Oklahoma might we see?
Yeah, there's quite a few local impacts that are already hitting. Literally, when we had the vote today that failed to just keep the government open at status quo, that signaled that civilian federal employees will not be paid on time because we had to get that done by today because the timing for the direct deposits start for them the 10th. That is this Friday. And so if we didn't get that done today, it won't happen on time for them. Even if we voted tomorrow, it's still going to be delayed. So the first paychecks for civilian employees go out this Monday. For members of the military, it is next Wednesday. If we're not done by Monday, then members of the military will also have delayed checks there. But we've got lots of other issues going on. The Air Traffic Control Training Academy, that's in Oklahoma City, those folks are furloughed, which means not only those employees are furloughed, but we don't have new air traffic control training that's actually happening. They're now 8 days delayed. If they have a couple more days of their delay, it will end up canceling this entire class and they'll have to start over. That's a really big issue. We need a lot more air traffic controllers. E-Verify is offline right now. So if you're a private business and you're hiring someone new and you need to use E-Verify to be able to check their legal status, you can't do that right now. IRS has a lot of folks that are furloughed. You can't just call in and get tax answers right now. So there are a lot of things that are affecting our private businesses and government operations around the country that are already kicking in.
Senator James Lankford with us live here on the KRMG Afternoon News. I wanted to ask you about a couple of other things, including the reports of troops going into Chicago and Portland and potentially, I think, Memphis is the other city. Are things bad enough in those cities, do you think, to send in the Guard?
Well, there's a couple issues that are there. In Portland, there's been not just protests, but violent protests for several months now. We remember in 2020, these same Antifa protests that were happening in Portland caused millions of dollars of damage to federal buildings. We had multiple federal law enforcement that were injured in all of those quote-unquote protests. They weren't protests, they were riots that were happening there. And I think what the president's trying to do is to say, these protests are all breaking out and have become more and more violent each day, and they're right at the ICE office in Portland. So to protect the federal building there and federal employees, they're trying to be able to encircle them with the National Guard and say, you're not going to stop them from doing their work, and we're not going to allow violence to be able to deter a legal operation that's actually happening there. So this is not just a protest that's happening in Portland, as we've seen in the past with Antifa protests. They get very, very violent and have done millions of dollars in damage. In Chicago, this has been an issue also with ICE that's happening there and some of the protests that are occurring that become more violent, but also with crime that's occurring there. I know the mayor in Chicago has stepped up and said everything's fine, move along, but at the same time, he's literally prohibited, has done executive action to try to prevent ICE from actually operating anywhere in the city of Chicago on any federal, any city space, any spot on it. So this has become a standoff to say we can't have an area where we have literally people we recognize with criminal records that are illegally present, that we're just going to turn our head and say they're not there. There are gang members, there are other folks that are there that do have a significant criminal history that are hiding out in Chicago, and federal law enforcement has the right to be able to go in and actually execute the law in that. So that becomes the standoff. In Memphis, it's different because the governor has actually invited them in to say, hey, we need help in Memphis. We've made a lot of progress in the last several years, but we need some additional help. And so National Guard is being activated there to be able to say, what can we do to be able to assist local law enforcement that they are cooperating together?
Senator, last time you and I spoke, we were talking about this very issue in Washington, D.C. I've read that there was a positive impact from their presence there, but now that they've left, some things are cropping back up. What are you seeing?
So I've not seen recent statistics on that. I know the mayor of Washington, D.C. did come back and say, hey, we want to cooperate with the National Guard. We need the help. A lot of federal law enforcement was engaged as well to be able to help. They actually were able to arrest quite a few folks with long-term criminal histories that they were able to identify. A lot of the folks that live in these neighborhoods don't want that crime in their neighborhood. This became a political thing because it's in Washington, D.C. But if you're a resident of Washington, D.C., which I'm not, I'm a resident of Oklahoma, but for those folks that live in Washington, D.C. full-time, I heard a lot of positive things of people saying, finally, we need help to be able to make sure that our streets are clear. That gave the opportunity for local law enforcement to catch up, and then they've got to be able to take it from there.
Senator, I know you have about 3 minutes with us here. I just want to ask you one more thing. I'm seeing reports this afternoon that the president may travel to the Middle East. He has described this peace deal with Israel and Hamas as close. Do you see it that way? Is this going to get across the finish line?
Yeah, they've made more progress lately than has happened in the last 2 years, certainly. Everyone is ready for those hostages to be released. Everyone is ready for Hamas, a clear terrorist organization, to not dominate the people of Gaza, use them as human shields in the oppression that they've done there and the long-standing 2-year war that's happening there. Europe has tried to negotiate this. Middle East partners have tried to negotiate this. There have been several efforts. This one seems to be sticking at this point. There's a lot of conversation that's happening that's very, very positive. I spoke to Marco Rubio earlier today, our Secretary of State. He had a very positive impression because there have been so many different entities here that have just said, we don't agree, and they've walked away. This time they've said, hey, there's some areas we like, some areas we don't like. Can we finish the negotiations, see what happens? The key is going to be when we actually see hostages start coming home. That'll be the biggest key on this, to be able to say it's not a piece of paper, but it's reality.
Senator James Lankford, thank you for joining us.